All right, it's 7 o'clock and I will call the November 8th Board of Selectmen's meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Don't have any amendments to the agenda right now. So I'll move on to 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3.
Could we take those separately?
You want to take them separately?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a motion to move the minutes? So move 4.1. Do I have a motion to move the minutes of September 27th? Sure. Moved by Rob, seconded by Karen. Any discussion on those minutes?
I
David?
recommend we change 12.1 to read an executive session was held in pursuit of 1 MRSA section 405 sub 6H, conferring with town attorney only. So no reference to this person. Which I believe was the vote because I voted for it.
Yeah, I think it was just taken off the agenda. So.
Mhm.
All right. Other than that, anyone have anything? All those in favor? All right, passes 5-0. Move on to 4.2, the minutes from October 4th.
Move to
Do I have a
accept.
motion? Move, but you can't move and second. You can only move.
I said move to accept.
Okay, yeah, oh, okay, I thought you moved and seconded. it.
All
I
right,
said, David,
well,
you
I
can't,
got
you
two
can't do that.
hands.
Moved by David, seconded by,
I'll do it.
There you go.
Karen.
Thank
all right, any discussion on those minutes? See anything? All right, all those in favor? All right, passes 5-0. Move on to the minutes, 4.3, the minutes from October 25th. Do I have a motion? Moved by Rob, second? Seconded by Tor. Any discussion?
you. Yes, I would recommend a change. It referenced that Mal Carey made a comment during the comment section and that we actually put in what his comment was. And if you need a, you may recall that his comment was that that a careful reading of the draft code would have caught the issue of a statutory prohibition of the town exempting itself from the requirements of the code, as I recall.
Does anyone have any discussion on that? All right. Other than that, everyone good with that?
Mhm.
All right.
As
All in
amended.
favor?
Yep.
All right, passes.
Thank you.
5-0. All right, now we'll move on to section 5, public comments on items not on the agenda. The board requests that public comments are limited to 5 minutes per subject. So do we have anyone with, yep, Jim Ryan, want to step up and state your name?
James Bryant, trustees of the Newcastle Fire Company. We have a petition for the town for an ordinance, and we'd like to present it to the selectmen. And tonight, we got 206 signatures.
So that has to go to Michelle, who's the,
I think we can accept
Can we
it and then
accept
I'll
it?
bring it. Yeah, we'll
that
bring it to
okay?
Michelle in the morning.
all right,
Yeah.
that's fine. It's just gonna go
Yep.
travel
Yep.
around a little bit, if you're good with that. Okay. All right. Any other comments? Yep.
Hi, I'm Sandy Paulson from Sheepsgate Village. And I wanted to, a couple of things. I wanted to confirm that you received a letter, that all of you received a letter from members of the West Old County Road and Chase Farm Road regarding the road construction on West Old County Road this year, and then also future road construction. Just wanted to confirm that you got it. Okay, yes, okay. And has there been any discussion on the letter amongst the select board? Or is there any planned discussion? Because I think the 15 or so signatories on the letter are really eager for some sort of response from the board. We had some comments, we had some questions, we had some recommendations for future road work. We had some specific requests for changes to the road construction on West Oak County, mainly some culvert replacements. So I just wanted to come today. I didn't want to necessarily make it an agenda item because I didn't want to, personally, I didn't want to make it an agenda item because I didn't want necessarily the road commissioner to be involved at this stage. I wanted to have a discussion with the board about the matter first, because considering that Hagar did the work on West Oak County Road, I didn't think we didn't think it was appropriate for him to provide a response. So we would like some sort of response, and I just wanted to hear from members of the board if you guys are planning some sort of response.
So I would just say that as far as road projects are concerned, everything does go through our road commissioner, because that is his job in the town. So we have an appointed road commissioner, that's Seth Hagar. And we've looked at the various, we have reviewed the various comments in the letter. I think we've touched on a lot of them already in responses, but these things have come up before. Like I said, I don't know as far as future road projects. With any future road project, that's something that we discuss in budget season for the following year. So as it is, the work that was budgeted for and planned for West Oak County Road has been completed for this season. And that's that's where that one sits.
So we specifically requested a response from the select board, considering that we find it in conflict that the issues that we have that were detailed in the letter are a result of Hagar Enterprises doing the work in a lot of ways, not completely. Some of the issues that we outlined were in communication with the town, things that we think could be improved upon. So there are elements of that, whether they're specifically related to the construction or they're related to how the town communicates and engages the community on such projects. There are elements of that letter that are not related to the construction that I do feel could use some sort of attention by the select board. And you know, there are, like I said, like 15 residents on the Chase Farm Road and West Old County Road that really were affected in a lot of ways. So much that we came together as a community to craft a very detailed letter to the board. It took a lot of energy and coordination amongst the members of the community. And we do feel that some sort of formal response, specific response to some of the comments, questions, there are questions in that letter and recommendations for future work that I think do require, or that we would really like a response to. So we really hope that, given, you know, we know that you're very busy. We know that this is a civil, you know, a civic, that you are giving, you know, your time as, you know, members of the board to the service, in the service of the town. So we recognize that, but, you know, considering that this was something that was very important to our community, and also, to be honest with you, the broader Sheepshead community, but this letter is really focused on the West Old County and Chase Farm Road community. We really would hope that you would give it some attention and some response. I think a lot of people would feel kind of jaded by not having some sort of response from the board. So we encourage you to think about that, and provide everybody with something. We don't want this to be overlooked, and we don't want to feel unheard, and we certainly don't want to be ignored. And I know that's not your intention, but just recognize that this was a very important thing to the community.
Let me just, so I appreciate that. So I don't, it hasn't fallen on deaf ears. I just want you to be aware of that. Yes. So your letter and your comments, because I've talked to you specifically, have not fallen on deaf ears. So I just want you to know that. I think it's already been in conversation through our last presentation by the road commissioner.
Was that the May 5th?
No, this was last month. I believe Rob made comments at some point, maybe in that meeting. About somehow arranging about, an outreach program, some kind of system for notifying residents what's going on. So it's already sort of become part of the conversation. I would say what you can expect is a response that comes through the town manager, not specifically a letter from each of the selectmen that address that
Sure.
letter.
Something, yeah.
So I just want to assure you that it's not sort of dismissed. It just, we haven't gotten to it yet. If you can appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah, and I can accept that. I just want to have that conversation and see where it was at.
I'll just add very briefly. We determined which road projects that through the budget process. And then, when the roads are going to be operated on, then there's a notification shortly before. So I think there's an intermediate spot where the town needs to do a better job, make sure everyone knows what projects are being done this year. So that's the piece. The town can do a better job.
Yeah.
And so we're-
Yeah.
And the scope of the road plan, that the scope of work that the town takes on to fix these roads. That road was in very poor shape, needed a lot of work. And since my time on the board, and when I first came on the board 6 years ago, we were throwing good money after bad, patching things. We'd put a culvert in here and put a culvert in there, and
Yeah.
we'd cut things out and dig up the culvert that was done 2 years ago because it wasn't the right size and part of a larger project. And so it can be hard for people to understand the scope of the work that we're doing, and we're doing it while saving a lot of money. The work that's done is done in a way to be not the best road, but take care of the issues that cause the road to degrade. And that's the intent of all of these projects that we do, and that's how we've been handling it in our road plan. And so it is a different scope of work. We're not just going out and throwing pavement on top of things and calling it good and letting it fall apart in a couple of years. So again, initially these projects, it's just like any change. It appears bigger, I think, initially, and then as nature takes its course, things grow back in. The natural seed bank that's there fills in, and it doesn't look so stark as it does now. But that's just to explain how that process happens.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm a civil engineer. I work in consulting on in the civil engineering world.
Yeah.
So it's not like I don't understand the importance of infrastructure, how infrastructure can degrade over time through lack of proper engineering and maintenance. So it's not that we are that the undersigned of the letter are in disagreement with the requirement, the need for a some more intensive action on that road. But the letter speaks for itself. There are specific items that we were in disagreement with. Culvert invert elevations, the changing of the hydrology without engineering design or oversight, the communication, which is a big piece of that, And while we may not be able to go back in time, I really hope that, that we as a community, you as representatives of the community, the town manager, other members, that we can do a better job at communicating. Having a notification the night before that our road was going to be closed, for example, in the letter was just, it did not work for us. It's, having these agendas go out. I mean, I checked for the agenda for tonight's meeting, actually on the website. I couldn't find it. So, the town says that we're going to have, that these are discussed at select board meetings. Well, quite frankly, we don't know what the agenda items are going to be for a Monday meeting. And so, we know that there's nothing nefarious or, that you're not working hard, but we've got so many challenges in the near future. We've got challenges now. We've got challenges, with climate change, with everything that's happening in our world. Things are getting more and more complicated, which really requires us to be more engaged with each other and more transparent and more communicative. And I really personally, I think this road project was a prime example of how we need to do better. I mean, people were really upset about all these, various things, and it really impacts us at the community level. It impacts people that abut. I mean, I had a very personal thing that
Can I just
happened.
ask you to,
Okay.
we're just trying.
Yeah. No.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
so we're well beyond
Yep.
that.
I'll quickly say one more thing. It's a question. Has there been any discussion about the streetlights in Sheepskin Village?
So we have been discussing streetlights as an entire as an entire town thing, and again, it's one of those things that it takes time to go through. We haven't had the time,
I
but-
realize it
but I
takes time.
think-
So there's been discussion.
Yeah.
Has there been what's the process? Any updates? Like,
Nothing right now. So, but we're working. Yeah.
because last time I talked, it was like a month and a half ago, there were discussion of maybe putting in some shields, something.
Didn't we get those? We got some sample shields, didn't we? Do you know?
You got
Sarah?
sample shields? Okay, great.
I believe we got some sample shields. That was about right when I started.
Mhm.
I know something Dan Rascata is doing is if people have complaints about the brightness of a specific street light, that they're lowering the brightness. If that's something that the board wants to discuss at a future time, that's something that we can definitely do physically. But it's a policy matter, so we need to figure out how we're going to manage people's complaints about streetlights on a general basis, so we're not just making specific exceptions. So that's something we should put on a future agenda to talk about.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Thanks, Sandy.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments?
Hi, I'm Bonnie Rademacher Cliffs from Pine Ledge Drive, which is off West Oak County, and I won't reiterate, but certainly want to express my agreement with what Sandy said. And I was at the September 13th meeting, and I submitted a letter with similar complaints before the community actually banded together to submit, that one petition or response. And I guess, in my letter too, was needing more information and knowledge about what the process is. As far as you said, there's been discussion, and so how do we know, and I'm hoping after this meeting and after Sandy's comments, that we will get a response, but if it's not this issue, if it's other issues, what is the process as far as getting back to people? I mean, September 13th is a long time ago. I submit a letter and then I don't hear anything. I mean, is there a rule, so to speak, that we should hear back within a certain time frame, or it goes to another meeting, or we're notified when it's going to be talked about in another meeting?
There's no specific policy, but again, the general rule is when a complaint comes in, it's run through the proper channels to look at it. I mean, this issue in particular, there's been a lot of discussion around it. So I don't know. So,
Yeah, so that's been the delay with getting back on this issue personally. So I will be sending a letter in response, but I have to talk to each member of the select board individually to see where they stand, to make sure what I'm putting in the letter is reflective of the bulk of people. I need to talk to the road commissioner and make sure that I'm getting accurate information in order to report back. So it just takes some time when we have other things, but I have seen your letter and I'll be sure to get back to you within a couple of weeks. Okay.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, because like I said, I just needed to know that. And just for the record, the road commissioner did respond directly with one of our neighbors, and thus, as Sandy said, we're not satisfied with the response. So that's why we're looking for a response from all of you. And I also want to just speak to the speed limit. There are no signs for posting of speed limit now that the road is a nice clear speedway for some of our folks. What's the process for getting a posting for speed limit?
Can I, staff, is it okay if you speak to that, what the process typically looks like on a local road for posting a speed limit? That would help. Thank you.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So posting speed limits, it's a great question. We had several discussions with multiple residents on West Oak County Road in person while this was all going on. Posting of speed limits isn't as simple as just putting up a speed limit sign. We have to do what's called a survey or a road study, which is conducted by the Region 2 DOT engineer. It actually has to come from a petition from the Board of Selectmen. That petition goes to him for approval. They go and do a speed study. The speed study then comes back to us for adoption or acceptance. It then has to go back to the Maine State Police, and the Maine State Police has to approve it. And then it comes back to us for posting. And then it can become an official speed limit that's enforceable by the sheriff's office. So the whole process takes about 4 or 5 months. It is very lengthy, and it is not something that we do on all of our roads because of this. Typically, it has to be driven from a request over multiple times from multiple different people, or an accident or an event that has happened that's triggered something that's out of the norm for that request to be made. Otherwise, you can imagine that the state would be inundated with requests for speed limits on every small road, and it's just not feasible. So that's the process in which we go to get an approved speed limit. We do have speed limits on multiple roads, signs, which will be coming up in a later discussion tonight. But basically, it's a good faith effort to have people follow them, basically. Long story short.
So we went through this process on Academy Hill most recently.
Correct.
Academy Hill.
Stonebridge and
There
Timberline.
used to be 25-mile-an-hour signs all the way down Academy Hill that weren't legally posted signs. That was something that a prior select board had kind of gotten behind and put all those signs up. When DOT looked at it, they put that road at 35, I believe.
We recently had a bunch of requests for North Newcastle Road, as everybody here is aware. North Newcastle Road on one side is posted at 35, on the other side it's posted as 25. at the beginning. Makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
Come to find out, we requested the information from DOT. There's actually 3 posted speed limits on North Newcastle Road. So it's something that we are actively trying to work out and pursue and get through as we try to get to the bottom of some of these issues. But it's not legal, and it's not by any way accepted just to slap a speed limit sign up. I mean, we can, but it doesn't mean anything. It's not enforceable. It's purely a please abide by this, but if you don't, oh well.
I don't know
So-
about you, but I haven't noticed many speed limit signs that are paid attention to these days,
Well,
unfortunately.
That's the whole other thing. But if we do want to try to get some enforcement action on it, and you want to contest that, the reason that the process is in place is because if you want to contest it, you got a really good attorney. He goes back and reviews these documents for approval. If it's not approved, you fight it, go to court, it's thrown out, and it's all for nothing anyways. So that's why the process is in place, so that we have an actual legal document.
So to get one on a road like Westall County Road,
Mhm.
we need to do a petition to the DOT.
What needs to happen is the board needs to direct for that request to go to the Region 2 traffic engineer. And then he asked me a series, typically that comes through me. So I'll say, hey, Town of Newcastle is requesting this. He'll say, what is the reasoning? I have to justify the reasoning. Hey, we've had a bunch of citizens complaints, or we've had a bunch of car accidents, or we've had whatever. And then after that, he'll order the traffic study. If he'll research it first and find out if there has been one in the past. If there hasn't been one, then he'll order a traffic study. DOT has to go out and do the traffic study, and then they'll get back to us with the findings, and then they'll tell us what the posting is. And then it comes to you folks for approval if you agree, okay, we're gonna post. I mean, because quite frankly, in some situations, it comes back and the
Yeah.
community may want to be 25, and he'll say the posted speed limit is 45.
Mhm.
And then that really upsets people. So, it's a double-edged sword.
Sounds like a long process.
It is well,
Like
it's
6 months or 4 months.
depending on how busy the road is and, what complication study is, but several months, I would say yes.
Do you have a list of what roads have approved speed limits?
No.
Can you request that from DOT? Like,
Uh,
all the towns, can they give us a list of all the roads that have?
Sure. I can ask David if he, would provide that information, to us. I mean, it's not like it's private or protected, but,
That might be really helpful to know what we have, what we're working from now, and then know what
Yep.
the priorities going forward.
Joel's right. Academy Hill is the only other one. Timberlane and Stonebridge recently in with Academy Hill are the only roads that I know of recently that have had approved speed studies done.
So it's definitely something we can look into. I think where it's a dead end road, with dead end roads, generally the people who are driving on the dead end roads are in that community. So it's
There's a business on that road too.
yeah. Yeah. So.
For those of us raising children.
Yeah.
Serious issue for everyone, but.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time before. But yeah, that time is not put back up.
I'm just gonna, again, keep the subject moving along. We're trying to keep things to 5 minutes.
Right.
So thank you for that very much. Do you have anything else? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Any other public comments? Yep, you, sir. What?
Fortunately, I was unable to attend some of the sessions you folks have had.
Could you
Actually,
please
since
state,
January.
could you
I'm
please
Frank
state your-
Jutnick. I'm from
Yep. thank you.
Westall County Road, 1 mile up from Sheepscott Road. And one of the questions I had is and it may have already been covered, I don't know. Because I couldn't hear what was going on. I guess the mics are not working back there. I should have probably sat over here somewhere. But what's going to happen next? What is going to happen next? What are they going to do next about that area? It sort of looks like an Afghanistan war zone in that area. I mean, it seems very unfinished. The grass is growing. I don't know how high it's going to grow. Is someone going to come by and cut that area of the grass to make the area look nice? We have a lot of swamps down there now. I never knew existed. You know, I'm concerned about that. One of the other concerns I had is the asphalt ended at Miller's property. That's the last house on the left. And right off that asphalt, it drops down. And that's been a continuous problem year after year. Because when cars got off the asphalt, they hit the dirt, sand, whatever you call it, and it would create a big hole. And it would, you know, from the rain, spring rains and all that type of thing, and ended there. So a question was raised, why did you stop there? Why not go a little further in? Well, there's only 2 families that live beyond this area here. That was not a good answer. There are 21 families living on West Old County Road, or one of the tributaries of West Old County Road. Actually, it's more than 21. And that's 1 mile from Chief Scott Road to the end where it becomes a cow pasture, like a cow path before the bridge. And they could have gone all the way down to the end down there so that the people who live at the far end would be served by the flowers and all that type of thing. I believe that could have been done by the Board of Selectmen. And instead they put on private property, they dug out an area there for a turnaround. I told the guys, look, hey, turn around in my yard. I don't care. But no, they had to have that special turnaround. Now it's become a lover's lane or something like park over there for some reason. They like the spot, I guess. I don't know. That's right across from my house.
Of course, you're advertising it now, so everyone, you're gonna have every teenager in the area that's I mean,
Well,
isn't that
it's
what
true.
teenagers do? Watch the Newcastle Board of Selectmen's meeting?
No, but please, why couldn't they have gone down to the end? It's not that far. Then I look at the fire station, in which I love the firefighters, and I mean, that's a very important facility, I'm sure. But I wonder what it costs to put all that asphalt in there. Those trucks are very seldom leave that spot. That must have been very, very expensive, and a few bucks that they saved by not going a little further down West Old County Road. You know, that would have made a lot of sense, because you're gonna have to be going back there every year after spring rains, filling up those potholes. And it's bad on your front end, by the way, you know, all the parts of the front end. So, oh, one little minor thing. Right near Sandy's house at the end, number 2 Chief Scott Road, is a sign that says dead end. And it's facing west down towards Chief Scott Road. Shouldn't that be around the other way? Showing that West Old County Road is a dead end. I mean, someone should take a look at that. And one other question I have, this whole project, what did it cost? Approximately.
I don't have the number in front of me. What's that?
$311,000.
Oh.
But we haven't spent the $24,000.
Oh, so guardrail is going to go up there? Yeah, that's a good idea. I worry about that. Cars coming the other way. The road is very narrow and you're gonna pull over to the right. Or somebody's gonna pull over. Again, that was the only comments I had to make about that. Oh, one more thing. I feel like Columbo. One more thing. You know, what would be nice is many other municipalities, when they do a project like that, and you may have suggested that, I don't know. Like I said, I was involved with a very personal matter since January. And so I could not attend some of the meetings you had and all that. Would have been nice to go to the Harriet Bird building and invite people from Chief Scott Road and Chase Farm Road for like a hearing there and let them talk about what's going on over there. Where's the road going to end? Why doesn't it go all the way down, you know, to that path where the bridge is? Or at least the last house. Their last house has, I believe, three youngsters in there that live there. I don't think a fire truck would ever get down there, nor could an ambulance. I mean, that should have been considered. And I think that could have been brought up at a hearing that you could have had at the Harriet Bird Center. I think which would have made a lot of sense. Hope I'm not being redundant here, because I really couldn't hear what was being discussed among you folks back there. But that's my only comments
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
that I can think of.
Check out Lover's Lane, Frank.
I had to call the sheriff's office one evening. I didn't know why the car was there. It was no, there was no one in it. There's no one in it. So the sheriff deputy came by, stopped at the house, walked over there to the car that was parked there. The keys were in it. Nobody was in it. I don't know where they were, but yeah, those are things that happen. Also, the road is a beautiful job. You know, the surface of the road is great, but you know, the sides, not that great. And I found motorcycles, three-wheelers, zoom right down that road now from one end to the other. I'd say about 35, 40 miles an hour, maybe a little higher than that. My dog chases after them. I don't think they like it, but God sakes, I hope he doesn't get hit. Hey,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. All right, any other comments? All right, seeing none, we will move on to 7.1, CLC ambulance presentation by Nick Bryant. Get the hot seat, Nick. Oh, and Ellen McFarland, our representative.
Hey,
Hi.
So do you folks have the packet that was sent into the town? Okay. So essentially, we've come here to discuss the annual budget for the service and answer any questions you folks might have. I know a few of you were part of the budget meeting and the budget before you passed unanimously. If you'd like, we can just answer questions. I think most of us have discussed this fairly thoroughly, so I won't, give you a long speech about something you're fully aware of. I'm just happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, we discussed it a little bit at our last meeting, just slightly, and Tora and I tried to bring people up to speed on
Okay.
What was discussed at the meeting that we attended, and I gave a little back history on the two other meetings that I've attended 3 meetings now in total.
Yep.
And just sort of the changes that have happened throughout since the cost started going up because of the number of the biggest change being the number of transports over at Miles.
Absolutely. The change a few years ago came from, we used to do a lot of what's called BLS or basic life support transfers. To be something like transfers from Miles to Cove's Edge for rehab. Cove's Edge doesn't have as many beds filled right now as they normally do. And also Maine Health recently, a few years ago, changed their policy on what left by ambulance. So it affected our income greatly. We went from doing 400 to 500 of those transfers a year down to less than 100. So you're talking a couple $100,000 in revenue. So that was initially where the bump came from. This year, it's nothing like that. It's, as you've probably heard us talk about and you've seen the paper, EMS is struggling. There's not enough workers in the workforce, and the workers that are there are looking around at jobs of equal skill in or outside of healthcare that pay oftentimes $4, $5, $6, $7 an hour more. So in an effort to treat these folks the way we frankly think they need to be treated to stay in the field and provide them a living wage, that's where the increase comes from. I know there was a question about our budget went up. I don't have the number in front of me, 37%, I think, but your request went up 172%. So one of the things that changes year to year is the formula is based 50% on your tax valuation compared to the other 6 ownership towns. The other half's call volume. So your call volume is never going to be the same percentage every year. So there's a little bit of variance there. It's obviously not 172% variance. But in this case, it's because our revenue from calls doesn't change that much year to year. Over the last few years, it's been anywhere between $850,000 to $950,000, which is where we project $900,000 a year. So whatever the shortfall below our budget every year falls onto the ownership towns of CLC ambulance service. So being that you only pay now a little over a third of the budget, when it goes up 2%, your request goes up 6%. In this case, it went up significantly more than that because of the payroll. So.
Okay, I'm still not sure I understand that, but so the difference between the 37% increase and the 100
because
in your
you don't,
payroll,
yes,
in your payroll versus the 172% ours went up. I just want to be able to explain it. That's all.
yeah, because you folks don't fund our entire budget.
Right.
You only fund the part that's less our revenue. So
Yes,
if you funded our entire
multiplies
budget
Mhm.
and then we wrote you a check for our revenue at the end of the year, that's how it would go up the same percentage. But because we can't increase our revenues, we we can, I guess, increase rates, but we're not going to collect anything on it. We can get into why that is, but we can't increase revenue. So at this point, the only way for us to increase income to pay our employees larger wages is unfortunately from the taxpayers. So
So from last year to your forecasted budget, it's not a shortfall in revenue then? I was wondering if this was the year that the transfers really impacted it.
no,
wondering-
that was several years ago, and that's why all the towns went from paying $20,000 collectively to $200,000. One of the things I hope doesn't get lost in all this is page 2, where you look at what are the municipalities in our area pay for ambulance coverage versus other
Oh, yeah.
municipalities. We're still extremely affordable in that realm. I know we're talking, was it $76,000 for you this year?
80 something.
80.
80, almost 83.
So, I mean, a lot of municipalities, actually, almost every municipality pays over 100,000, a lot of times over $250,000 for ambulance coverage. So we're trying to still stay reasonable, but at the same time, we can't, we have to stay competitive in the wages. And on that same page, it shows what wages are to other ambulance services, and we're not even close. Waldeboro started paying those wages as of a few weeks ago. Booth Bay's been ahead of us for a few years, and we're frankly the busiest ambulance service in the county. We can't pay the lowest. That's just not feasible for us.
Would you explain why you said you can't increase your revenue? Is the like Medicaid and the insurance companies limiting to what?
So, so they contract with insurance companies and heavily Medicare and Medicare here. And so they bill and get paid based on their contract. And so they are paid based on a contract. So even if they increase their charges, the folks that are going to be impacted by that are going to be the self-pay folks and the folks that
Private insurance.
so they're really heavily driven by contracts, and those contracts prohibit really them charging more. It doesn't do them. All it does is increase their contractual.
And you're stuck on those contracts for a long term, or?
Well, and as far as we don't have the percentage right here right now. We're trying to get that from the billing company, but over half of our patients, I feel it's safe to say, are going to be Medicare patients, and you can't change your contract with Medicare or Medicare. That's
And if you
You-
don't, if you
Yeah.
don't participate with Medicare, which you can do, but then they have a limiting factor. And it's not, it's really not advantageous for the service to not be a Medicare supplier. And it's not advantageous to the patients in the areas that we serve. It'd be
Is
very
there a
difficult.
federal answer to that problem, or a statewide answer?
interesting you would ask. Starting a year and a half ago, Medicare started doing a cost analysis of EMS services. So I think it's early next year they're going to come with their findings. They're still fact finding and getting information from all the ambulance services for another 2 years. Interestingly enough, they'll make the decision before they have all the information. But we haven't yet got to report. But in theory, every ambulance service in the country will report their costs. As some of the administrators in EMS have pointed out, one of the great problems there is you're reporting on the costs while we pay our employees peanuts. So they're now going to know what it costs us to run and pay our folks not very good wages. So in theory, after that cost analysis is done, the Medicare rates will be adjusted, in theory, upward.
But you never get to 100% of your cost plus a profit.
No, it'll probably never happen, unfortunately. And if it did, I don't know what would be the catalyst for that. And unfortunately, EMS kind of gets left out of healthcare. A lot of the benefits programs that would normally, go towards healthcare, EMS is kind of an afterthought at times, which is EMS is not a very old part of healthcare. It's only originated in the mid 1900s, 1950, 1960s, the earliest you see it, and we're still under like the National Highway Transit Safety Administration. We're not part of a normal healthcare. So we're the oddball in the family. So it's-
And do you anticipate a similar increase in wages or payroll over the next couple of years?
our hope is that if you look around the state, wages for jobs you didn't think would be $20 an hour now are. So it's very hard to pay an EMT $15 an hour when that's the case. So this is kind of an adjustment that it catches up with one of the services that was paying better. The other services around the county are kind of keeping pace with that and getting up. So we're above what would be an unskilled labor job. I don't need to call, but somebody has to maintain an EMS license even to be an EMT. So we can't just hire anybody to come drive the ambulance. So there's a factor of skill there. So we want to get the pay rates comparable to something, like a CNA or a medical assistant. And then unless there's another global pandemic, our hope is to do a 2 to 3% cost of living increase or whatever it is for that given year, like a normal municipality would do. So we don't just see a jump like we have this year.
I think there's something here that has probably been a historic problem. I worked at CLC for 20 plus years before I retired, and it's always been a stepping stone occupation. So you came in, you did some time as an EMT, you might advance to a paramedic level, but then you moved on to something else because that's where your bread and butter, your livelihood came from. And so I think part of what you're seeing here, well, I know part of what you're seeing here is the desire to turn these jobs into a career path opposed to just a temporary, we'll do this until we go on to nursing school or PA school, or maybe we leave the occupation altogether. These folks put in a lot of time, and the continuing education hours are formidable at this point. And so a lot of people leave the occupation because it's really not, they don't treat it as a full-time job. So I think part of what you're seeing, and I think you're seeing it countywide, you're seeing it statewide, is the desire to make this a career opposed to a part-time job.
It's very tough to do as a volunteer. I think you look around the county at the fire departments, they understand that. It's a similar situation. So,
Couple questions on the formula.
Yeah.
The tax valuation is the state adjusted.
Yep, it's what's posted on the state's website.
Okay. And then has it been that 50-50 split between valuation and call volume sometime?
That's a great question. It predates me. I know that. Unfortunately, I've only been here for 3 years. So, well, it predates me as the chief, but I want to say it changed roughly 10 years ago, looking back at how it's been in the records that I have access to. There's really no clear line because this has always kind of been an afterthought to every time, because like we said, you were splitting $20,000 6 ways 10 years ago. So it probably didn't measure on your radar any more than it did ours. So there's been some growing pains. There is, and you folks should definitely communicate or join Ellen on the 6th of December. We're entering into discussions for the interlocal agreement, where the biggest part of that's kind of ironing out what the formula will be, because as you can imagine, when there's 6 towns sitting there, some benefit from one part, and there's disagreement on that. We did send out some information. If you get your email, to make sure you guys get it as well. And that include hypothetical formulas that have been discussed. I think the one we have is pretty strong. I understand adding or taking things away from it, but I think it's important to consider the effect of the actual taxpayer. When we get discussing what towns should pay, we talk about towns like they're individual people. On those formulas, there's forecast what an average taxpayer of a $200,000 home would pay. And I think that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at those things, because it's about the people. And if your neighbor calls a bunch this year and doesn't next year, it's not really your fault, and benefiting from that's kind of strange to me. So, but,
I don't know if other government entities have a formula. I mean, typically
Yep. It's tax valuation.
Unfortunately, all our government revenues are based on
Yeah.
property tax.
Yep.
So this is obviously.
This is a slight variance because there was a lot of discussion year after year after year about how that really wasn't fair because it didn't take into consideration call volume. And so I think this formula was an attempt to try to mitigate that a little bit. I think the unfortunate truth is that you're never going to make every single town happy. So the formula that they've been using was just an attempt to try to make the formula seem more fair.
Which is why I'd encourage you to have your voices heard on
Yeah.
December 6th, because some towns would like 100% call volume, which would unfairly affect some of the towns that have larger populations that swell during the day because of work or services provided, and would disproportionately affect those taxpayers, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
I would assume you don't have information that might shed a little light on that, which would be where do the people live who are using those services? Because
And
I would
Funny
guess
you should say-
Damascotta is
funny you
not,
should say that.
it's not all. people in
Everybody does want to
Damascotta,
know
right?
that, and that's a tough one. And
Yeah.
We could get something of that nature. Unfortunately, it's going to be very muddied by the fact that if the patient's legal address is Suffolk, Mass, or
Mhm.
then, okay, well, where's their summer home? Do you want me to call them and ask?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it would become
Yeah.
very laborious and
Yeah.
very difficult.
Yeah,
And
it would be.
it's something we could attempt to do, but again, I think the numbers would probably be rough at best.
Oh, yeah. But
So,
that's,
but it's tough, you know, and then the argument to population is, well, that summer population is that
mhm.
if you're using, you know, then we argue tax evaluation. What about your untaxable properties? Oh, I've heard every argument at this point,
I
trust
bet
me.
you have.
Mhm,
How long does it take an ambulance to get there?
Yeah.
mhm.
It is interesting to look at the tax valuation of each town though, and you look at
Yes,
how it's broken out. I mean,
100%, yeah.
you know, Bristol's 4 times
Yeah,
tax valuation that Newcastle is.
well, and that's why it's hard, and, you know, not to pick on Damascotta because nobody's here from
Yeah.
Damascotta, but, you know, the average taxpayer of a $200,000 home there pays significantly more than any other taxpayer. They have more they have more calls, but they also have the nursing home in their community. They also have, you know, Hannaford,
Mhm.
Coastal Grocery,
The
like all the
business hub.
businesses. So
Right.
there's a lot of factors to it, and to just pin it on any one town because they have a lot of calls, it's kind of tough. I think there needs to be more than one factor to the formula, and I think taking out valuation takes out basically the effect on the taxpayer in the town. So it's
Right.
got to be in there somewhere. Like, that's just my opinion. I don't get a say. I'm just the chief, but it's the 6 of the towns that are ultimately going to decide. So
Yeah.
make sure your voice is heard, I guess,
So-
is my request.
Be there with me on the sixth.
Yes, because there's some passionate opinions.
Yes,
What hap-
absolutely.
What happens after the 6th? What's the process?
That's entirely up to the 6 towns. I'm kind of the orchestrator of my boss is telling me what to do here. But the hope, I believe, from the town administrators and the town selectmen that I've heard from is that you guys come to an agreement. There's a rough draft going around now. Ellen's got a copy for you folks. What would you like changed? This is a working meeting where hopefully there'll become a more finalized draft. But ultimately, once that group comes together, being yourselves and the 5 other towns, and have what we believe is a final draft, obviously, each town lawyer is going to look at it, service lawyer is going to look at it, and then each town will have to vote to adopt it. So we become less of a, I think a lot of towns still have us as a charitable donation every year, but we're your ambulance service. If you decide not to be charitable next year, what happens? It's kind of,
Mhm.
it's getting the towns together to agree that we're your ambulance service, you own us, you operate us, you have to fund us, and this is how we're going to do it. These are the rules under which we operate. So it's a really update to our bylaws as well as getting the 6 towns to come together as one and agree how it operates.
And the formula is part of
Yeah,
that interlocal draft. So in order to adopt it, we've got to have a formula.
Yeah.
So,
and arguably the most contentious. Everybody can agree what number of purchase I have to put out for bid. Those things aren't hard. Everything operates the same way in that regard. It's
Yeah.
it's the formula, unfortunately.
No, I think it's, I mean, 3 years ago when I first came to one of your meetings and I, you know, saw everything operated, I understood the need for a clear agreement. I think it always,
Yeah.
it's important in anything to have a clear direction as to what you're spending money on and how it works and
Yeah.
how to plan for expenses and all that. We have a budget that we have to try and hit every year. And so knowing how we're gonna, you know, how we're gonna break it out is important.
Yeah.
So.
well, I think this agreement too helps the ambulance stay accountable to the towns.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very important. We feel, you know, I feel as your Newcastle's representative that it's a two-way street here.
Yeah.
And so this agreement's really important for both parties.
No, and you know, I mean, the meeting that, I mean, it'd be good if we could, even as a whole board, sit in on those meetings in some way, just because it's interesting to see. I mean, audits, you know, we're going over the audit for all your expenses and how everything's.
All the revenue we write off. every year
Yeah,
that we didn't
no, but I
collect,
mean,
yeah.
it really shows, you know.
If we
where
collected
the budget
everything we
comes
build
from.
every year, we could write you a check, but we don't,
Yeah.
and we never will.
Yeah.
So
No, I understand that. And then the only other thing I wanted to touch on tonight as well was the disbursement, how
Mhm.
the money is dispersed.
Yep.
The funny thing is, again, our charitable disbursements are always done this in November or December, which is, you know, just the way it works.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say that we can, you know, we can look into, you know, dispersing in a more regular manner, you know, monthly or something like that.
It would be
if that
helpful. I know
helps
we've discussed
to
it. The
keep
hard,
cash flow
the hard
going.
part for us is that where the raises are funded a lot more on tax dollars rather than our revenue, and winter being our slowest time revenue wise. The savings that builds up at the end of the year when all the towns, you know, finally pay us, not to make that sound, but
Right.
most of the towns pay us after September or October. So all the money we were operating on from January 1 to December 31st of this year comes in all at once. It's always kind of work that we kind of live off that through the winter until we can get to the next busy season in the summer and start living off that so you pay us the next fall. But if we're going to affect real and meaningful raises on January 1st, that's a tough thing to do in the slowest time of the year.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. We'll discuss again at the board meeting of maybe working into the raises, whether we start everybody on the lower end and then do something retroactive. There's a lot to talk about. A few towns have talked about using ARPA funds. Again, those are your funds to do with what you will. That's just something other towns have discussed, and it would be helpful because they could come earlier than, you know, it's next September. But even, you know, July 1st, if we got to check, we're still 50% of the way through the year. We're still $800,000 into our payroll budget in theory. That's a tough one to swallow when we're only going to make $900,000 next year in projected revenue.
Yeah.
Which is not all going to happen in the first 6 months, I promise you.
Right.
So these are just things to consider. Lines of credit have come up. Obviously, we'll do what we need to do. I would personally like to stay away from that because you're going to pay some level of interest on that, which just is wasting taxpayer dollars, in my opinion. But whatever my 6 bosses choose to do in that regard is what we'll do. So.
No, I think, you know, breaking out into, you know, either quarterly or monthly payments or something like that would make sense. And that's something that would happen in the next fiscal year, so that you wouldn't be waiting until November to get a, you know,
Absolutely.
it would be a steady,
Yeah, that would be
steady
excellent.
flow.
Challenge in the disconnect between fiscal years.
Yes.
Mhm.
When we
Right.
got this big jump,
Yeah.
and we've got a budget that
Right.
we're living on till June, we have to figure out how to.
And that's maybe another thing to talk about in the interlocal agreement. Do we make a hard transition halfway through a year to a fiscal year to match the towns? What would that look like? I mean, obviously it would be fairly simple, but the transition would be the hard part, being that, you know. Yeah.
So right now,
You understand.
your calendar year.
Yes, sir. And none of our towns any longer use that. I think Bremen was the last holdout for a calendar year, maybe. And all 6 of you folks are fiscal year now. But
Yeah.
that's a
Fiscal-
hard thing to transition, just deciding arbitrarily. So if that's something that you folks would like us to do, that would, by all means.
Fiscal year is different in some towns. So Bristol's on a different,
All
they're
right.
on a different thing. I think.
But I mean, even if it was in a few months of each other, it's better than
Yeah.
our budget year starting 6 months before any of you even
Right.
consider writing a check. That's tough. You know what I mean? And that's
Right.
nothing on you.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it's always been. And it's a transition that probably needs to happen if you guys so choose.
No, that's good. I appreciate you coming in and
Anytime.
clarifying and yeah, it's great. I do have Ben from the finance committee here. He's the only representative that I think is currently in the state of Maine. So,
Oh.
did you have any questions, Ben, or anything you wanted to say? You can approach the bench if you do. If not, you don't have to.
You got my seat.
No, one comment, I guess I would say is that unless or until the cost benefit analysis breaks in the direction of it making more sense for the town to go and don't try to keep our services, this is a steal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Great.
And I don't think anyone has any problems with people making a decent wage. That's nothing crazy. So I don't think that's a
Appreciate it.
problem.
Yeah.
They need to pay it something decent.
Yeah.
For what they do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thanks, Alan.
Have a good night, Ellen.
All right, moving on. Oh, I'll let some people go. Good. Anyone who wants to escape, escape now. Everyone else is stuck here. So moving on to 7.2, select board discussion regarding tentative parking ordinance. This is something that's come up a couple times. We've been working on some different ideas in the past, but just wanted to invite Seth Hagar, our road commissioner, to discuss some of these ideas. Just sort of get the ball rolling as to where we go.
Perfect. We've talked on the board a couple times about this phantom, idea that we might have a parking ordinance come. And before John left, we'd actually gotten to the point where we had jotted down a few ideas and gotten some state statutes together. So we had a template, if you will, of something that we could work off of. I provided that to Sarah just for her perusal, and it's not something that we want to share with you guys because we don't want to shoehorn you into something that is too boilerplate or not specific to Newcastle. But I want to assure you that we're working on something behind, but the point of tonight's conversation is more just to get direction from the board as to where you see this fitting into the town and how we can massage it so that it fits Newcastle appropriately. The problem that we have is real and legit on multiple different fronts, from snow removal problems to large event problems to emergency service problems, accessing different areas of the towns at different times of the year. It's not specific just to Pumpkin Fest. We have issues on 4th of July. We have issues surrounding parades. So there's other different factors that come into play here. It's not just a one-headed dragon, so to speak, that we need to be thinking about. When it comes to enforcement, there's a lot of wrinkles that need to be considered. Who's going to be able to declare what needs to be towed? How's the town going to respond when somebody doesn't agree that their vehicle has been removed? Who covers costs associated with that if we were found to be an error? There's a lot of factors that play into an ordinance like this. I'm not here saying that we're a large municipality, but we certainly have this problem that is real to a bigger community that we need to address. As you know, and we've been quite vocal about, a lot of what we do here is just in good faith and lacks policy to back what we are intending it to do. From street signs to ordinances to heavy weight limits to towing, it's all smokescreen and mirrors. So we really need to take some stance on where we're going to stand on some of these issues so that staff has the ability to remedy them when we have a problem. Otherwise, we're completely left floating in the wind here and, quite frankly, exposing the town to a lot of liability that is unnecessary. So again, I don't want to, this meeting isn't, or this discussion, I hope, isn't to get you guys to take any action tonight, but we just need to know, where are you at? And what are you thinking? And about how you want us to progress with this discussion and thought process so that when we bring you back something for you to actually look at, it's not just legalese and it's tailored to what Newcastle wants it to be. That way we're avoiding stepping back in conversations and we're able to move forward so that we can get something out.
So if like Pumpkin Fest, just because it just happened, we put up signs on Glidden Street saying no parking, and people just pretty much gave it the finger and parked in front of the no parking signs.
Correct.
If we had an ordinance, would the state, with the Lincoln County Sheriff who's around for Pumpkin Fest, would they be willing to write tickets? How does it work? Instead of having people towed immediately, right? How would that work? We don't have a police force.
Correct. So we don't have a police force, so we basically are at the whim of the county sheriff to enforce our ordinances. The likelihood of them doing it, I can't speak for Sheriff Brackett, and we don't have a representative from the sheriff's office here. I can only speak to past precedents when it comes to these situations, is that they're not going to enforce anything because they don't have the time and resources to dedicate to just Newcastle issues. So the way around that is to have staff be responsible to have these actions, i.e. the fire chief or the road commissioner or the town manager, designated people that have the authority to make these calls based on in theory, an ordinance that's black and white that we can follow so that we can enforce that ourselves and make that happen. We make the call to get the tow truck and we make the call in dealing with that. It takes that outside of the sheriff's office because they don't have a lot of resources. They're spread pretty thin.
So we can't rely on them. Is our only recourse towing, not ticketing them?
No, yeah, I mean, unless we want to start paying staff to go fight the tickets and all that stuff. I mean, it really is the most effective. And quite frankly, a ticket doesn't solve the situation. Fire truck can't get through or the snowplow can't get through. A ticket is mute. You know, we need the access now and immediate. So we're looking for something. And we're not talking about trying to be unrealistic with people, but we are talking about, you know, when we have a situation on Glidden Street, when they're parked both sides and we physically can't get cars down the road, that's a problem. You know, so it's those situations where we're looking to go to extreme, but we still need black and white to follow so that Sarah's not doing something that I'm doing different, that the fire chief's doing different, so that we don't get a large variety of issues and complaints, that we're all following the same sheet of music that's representative of what your wishes are.
So it seems like a important instrument for this whole thing would be a map of the downtown district that indicates where we have designated parking for events. I mean, I don't think we have something like that now, right? And so the idea that maybe we have a bunch of tow trucks going around during Pumpkin Fest is probably not that likely, but just knowing where people can park and where to put no parking signs and like police order, no parking on the side of the street, I think that would be helpful for everybody just to be on that side. So yeah, so I'm not sure if that's part of the plan for this ordinance is like just a map of the town. And I'm not saying like whole town, just downtown districts.
I think that'd be a question of scope. Yeah. Is it just, you know, do we want to apply it in the town, you know, for emergency prevention, lots of road, you know, anywhere in town, perhaps that you want some level of authority versus, you know, in village center, maybe there's other types of authority. So I think scope.
Yep.
I think just having that authority to having a parking ordinance that's because again, I don't think we're not planning on becoming Quick Turn's #1 customer here.
Correct.
But if we do have a situation, we need the authority to be able to remove that. So Lover's Lane down on West Old County Road, you know, if that's happening and there's a vehicle there that's parked, but there's no one around and someone needs to use that turnaround or whatever, if we can't really do anything about that, that could be an issue. So it could be kind of like a townwide sort of thing. But I don't think anyone's looking to wield the you know, someone pulling off the side of the road to, you
But
know.
I really think the real problem is the Glidden Street neighborhood. I mean, whether it's a big event or even sometimes Sunday and the churchgoers are blocking, you know, neighbors' driveways. So some ordinance may help clarify where they can park and where they can't.
A couple of them get towed, the word will get around real fast.
Very fast, or if the institution there, like the church, would actually communicate to their congregation that, you know, you can only park on so much space in front of the church, that may make a difference there. I do, though, wonder how much of Main Street is important, at least for snow clearing and things like that. And I know, I think Damascotta has a ban sometimes, or like from certain hours to the next day. Would we be doing something like that to help with snow removal, or is that not as crucial because it seems wider than across the
Winter
bridge?
parking ban.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I see the ordinance to be able to be written in multiple different facets. I mean, you know, just because it's the parking ordinance, within the ordinance doesn't mean we can't tailor it to multiple different areas. So we have an event portion of the ordinance that speaks specifically to public gatherings and stuff like that. We have emergency service portion of the ordinance that speaks specifically to, utilities and emergency service. And then we have, alternative arrangements so that we give somebody, some designated parking areas outside of those things. We'd have to brainstorm, maybe it's here at the fire station or, over on the other side. We'd have to come up with that. So the ordinance can have multiple heads on it, and each one can be tailored specifically to that need, so that you can't just randomly tow a car on July 16th for no apparent reason, but you still have the power during a parking ban to tow a car no matter where it is in town because it's snowing out and you block the road. So they can have specifics, but the specifics are each to each section, so that when we're dealing with a snow removal issue, this is how you do it, A, B, and C. When we're dealing with a pumpkin fest or a July 4th issue, this is what we're talking about. It also needs to address stationary issues that, for example, right now we can't enforce. Somebody parked in front of the fire station, what do? If somebody parked in front of a fire hydrant, how do we move them? We don't have any mechanism besides to say, well, there's a fire hydrant here. Well, great. So, those types of things we need to identify, within the parameters of this. So I think that there's multiple different prongs that we can do. But I would argue with you, David, that we have just as many problems in the outskirts of town as far as snow stuff goes as we do inside. We had a gentleman last year on Hassan Avenue park for almost 8 hours. I couldn't get by. I could not get by. So, it's one of those things. That's a dead end road. It's small, but I'm sure the citizens at the end, and what happens, they call, how come my road didn't get plowed? Well, they don't know that halfway down, there was a car parked on the side of the road and he can't get by. So.
And do they have space over there to get off the road, or?
No, they park in the middle. It's only 16 feet wide, so you put a vehicle in the middle and
Right.
it's done.
Solved it.
But at 2:30 in the morning, who cares, right?
Right.
Well, the plow guy cares. So, and quite frankly, it wouldn't be an issue until there was a fire call there and the fire truck couldn't get through,
I was gonna ask, did you guys ever have any issues with cars blocking access to anything? The hydrants?
You go through the windows, right? to get through.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hydrants have to be shoveled. They're shoveled in every municipality across the state. So it's part of the business, but we have multiple issues. The apartment building on top of Academy Hill on the dead end on Hillside Road there, that you go in, they park in the middle of the street. We can't get down to the end of that street. Glidden Street at the very end, down by the pillars, they park out close. We typically can't get by. Coming around the one-way section up by the mills, they park along the curb line up there. You can't get by.
In front of the
So-
no parking signs?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
It doesn't matter what the signs say. No
Nope,
matter if
doesn't.
it's 25 miles an hour and no parking,
doesn't matter.
they still park.
Yep.
So, those are the issues. Sproul's Furniture parks the van in front of the store during the middle of the snowstorm. I can't move it, no matter how many times we go in and ask them to nicely move it and park it out back. It's not every time, but I mean, it happens frequently. So, these are issues as we see population changes and things happen on the streets that become cumbersome to be able to get around.
So I see some parking downtown, I think has a time limitation. Is that just arbitrarily put on there by a merchant, or is that, do we have some?
We have nothing.
For that, okay. 'Cause I thought I saw somewhere, it said 2 hours only.
It's in front of Sproul's.
Yeah.
And both sides of the street it does, yeah.
Part of this needs to be our heavy loads limited ordinance. That's a 4-section potentially of this ordinance that we need. We can't enforce posted roads in the town of Newcastle. So we spend this money to redo roads and to fix infrastructure, and we break its back every spring. And we are on a hope and a prayer that somebody just abides by a poster that we stick on the end. We have no mechanism whatsoever to enforce it. But we still do that, and most people oblige to it, but we are purely flying by the seat of our pants. Which is exactly why I've stopped posting speed limit signs and other weight restriction signs, because we have nothing that clarifies anything throughout the entire town on what there is and what there isn't for restrictions or access or nothing. So it's very hard for me to put a road posted sign on North Newcastle Road for 35 tons when I've got absolutely no backing for anything that says this is what we're going to do. I've got no selectmen's meeting minutes. I've got no direction from the board. I've got no ordinance. I've got nothing. So people can get upset, but at the face, are they upset with me because I'm not doing it, or upset because I'm being honest and saying, I don't know what I can do?
Well, even with an ordinance, maybe a lot of weight limit.
Well, the ordinance, if the town develops an ordinance and says this is the weight ordinance on this particular road, we then have something to call and say, I need you to monitor this, just like a speed limit. So we could call heavy weights and measures and say, look, we're having a problem with truck traffic here. I need you to monitor this, and we have a mechanism and an arm to enforce that.
Okay, there's somebody that would monitor.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In the local ordinance, most municipalities that adopt a posted road ordinance, part of this, they enforce that themselves. So the public works guy or town manager, whoever, when they find an error, they write a summons, or they write a citation, or whatever the fine is going to be associated with that, through that local arm, and say, you just violated this road that is posted. You now either subject to the repairs of the road or this fine. Don't do it again. And if we catch it again, typically they go up and up until they get the point that the road's posted.
Have you seen violations of that?
We deal with it all the time.
So Seth, is this, obviously more than just a parking?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
are what is this? Is this only one document now, or is this?
No, I mean, I think, that's for staff to, Sarah to come up with, and, come with, I guess I really don't know how she would want it to look. I mean, we haven't really got that far
Yeah,
yet.
I guess I would suggest that we subdivide just off the top of my head with the things that we've talked about, having a parking ordinance and then a separate heavy loads limit ordinance, because the two don't really relate. Or a lot of towns have a traffic ordinance in addition. Yep. So that's how I would recommend dividing it.
Well, I don't see any reason to resist any of that idea. I
Yeah.
think it's a great idea, all of what you said, because the more definition structurally have to it, the more you can enforce it.
Yeah. I mean, the fire company can be just as involved with this, because if they get to a scene outside of a road issue, right, it doesn't have to be snowing, or it doesn't have to be, but if they get someplace and need to have access, then they have a guideline that they can follow too, and feel secure that, okay, you're prohibiting us from doing the same thing that Sarah can do from administrative. When people come in the town office, she has, well, they did this and they did this and they did this, and that's how we ended up here. And unfortunately, we are or are not going to reimburse you for the $100 it costs to tow your car. But I think a lot of what we do is try to be fair and consistent in our approach, and this would allow us to be that.
So why we wanted Seth to come and speak tonight was also to see if there were any pieces that you all, as kind of representatives of the public, if there are sticking points or problem areas that you've seen get repeatedly brought up to you over the years, if there are things that need to be addressed, and you don't have to think of it necessarily now, but if there are things that should be included as we're drafting this, just let myself and Seth know. We can begin to compile a draft, because we have a very rough draft, but it's very general at this point.
Seth, one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
A no parking sign on a state road, that there's a different set of rules for that, or is it still under the Newcastle jurisdiction?
No, I mean, technically, state posts their road, so their ultimate authority would be Maine State Police. But we don't have anything to enforce it. So if the state has posted it that way, it would be their jurisdiction to enforce, because we don't have a mechanism to do that. So again, Maine State Police, they probably defer it to the county and say, there's no parking here.
I'm thinking like in the mills, it's a
Yeah.
state road. So
Right.
if people are parked on the road and you're trying to plow, would it be our responsibility to then deal with it, or do we have to call the state?
The last 2 times we've turned around after calling the sheriff's office, and they've told us that they don't have the ability to come help us, and gone out Sheepskin Road. Or up over Academy Hill and come up through that way.
So then maybe would we have the ability to call a tow truck if need be, because you can't get through
Nope. I mean,
on Mills?
the last couple times they haven't come.
But
If we have an ordinance.
Oh, if we do, yes. If we do, that's part of this for discussion would be for us to say, you were blocking a public way, we'd have to, here's, for example, this is how it might work. We have to take a picture of it. And we'd have to prove that it was in the public right away, and we'd have a certain person that was designated to do that. And then maybe it would be that has to be forwarded to Sarah within, at the start of the next business day, for example, so that she could see it ahead of time. So that people come in, we'd have these guidelines set in place. And then a few designees, road commissioner, town manager, fire chief, EMA person, whoever that you guys want, chairman of the board of selectmen or something like that, I don't know, just ideas. And then you could have that ability to have those designees and they would follow your policy and ultimately make that decision to remove
just-
them or not.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we had that ability on state roads as well as
Yeah.
town roads.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's within the town jurisdiction and the state has posted it, no trespassing, then, or no parking, then you'd be able to enforce it.
Could we put that on a state road? Could we put no parking?
Yeah, we would have to coordinate with David Allen and just say, hey, here's our local ordinance. We're going to enforce what you have is no parking. Is there any changes you want? He'd say yay or nay, and then from there on, we could enforce it. On and on the off ramp, for example, that's posted state, it's a state road, but that's posted. You can't read signs anymore, but that's posted. So by virtue, we would then have the ability to say you can't park on the side of Route 1. You got to move. That's important. Parcels antique. But this subject, I think, is important for you guys to consider because it affects everybody. For example, if we put no parking signs up and we have a parking ordinance and the shuck station still parks at the town office, do we enforce it? I'm not singling out businesses, but I want you guys to understand the complexity of how this really comes together.
And I would just say that in that, whatever this is, having a mechanism for, because, the reality of it is that we don't have a big municipal parking lot somewhere.
Right.
Parking is limited. People are still driving cars. So there are events that happen, funerals, whatever it is, where there are a lot of extra cars, and there should be some sort of mechanism to notify the town, get a permit, or and then in that description, it could designate parking on one side of the road, not the other, and making sure that there's a couple people who are directing, a couple of the volunteers from the whatever
Event.
organization is having the event to make sure that people are following that rule. That way, again, to satisfy the need of
Exactly.
emergency vehicles going through, vehicles, safety, all that kind of stuff. So
Even just a private party, let's say somebody's having a wedding party, or something like that, retirement party, and they've got, 30 cars that need to park on Route 215.
Exactly.
And, would give them, rather than call the sheriff and say, I have a party tomorrow, they would be able to refer to the ordinance. That would probably say, notify the town, notify the sheriff.
Exactly.
So just as long as there's, we make it something that's friendly to use, and there's, ability to. The
Right.
reality is.
No parking on the left side if you have an art plate on the Thursday.
Right.
Exactly.
Between 8 and 12. Yeah. We don't want that. But,
Yeah.
No, and that's something that we want to be very transparent about, where we have mechanisms like the website, stuff that we want to be able to get the word out. I mean, this isn't to trap people. Our notion is to notify them so they can avoid this at all costs. This is just in the event that they want to ignore that warning or communication that, okay, look, we need to do something.
So one place where I've seen parking occasionally, but not often, is the town landing off of Liberty Street.
Yes,
Were you thinking of including something on that as well? Either
it's a great idea.
prohibit because of the the small area is, and the difficulty of getting in and out, or just restrict the time when they're down there, they're not at midnight, rev an engine.
Great. I mean, those are
Yeah.
valid questions that should be considered as part of this. Yes, exactly.
Give me all sorts of good ideas.
Well, you're finding Lover's Lane.
Lovers Lane down
Goodness
by
gracious.
Frank's house. I can rev my engine next to
You
your
and your van
place.
will
This
be
is-
down there tonight.
This is good. So, good information.
Thank you. That's
So I guess at the end, email some ideas or correspond back through Sarah, and she can get with me and reach out to other town staff, and then we can kind of shoehorn this into a better package for you guys, and she can disseminate if we get some feedback.
Excellent.
great. Cool. Thank you.
Any
Thank
questions?
you.
Thank you very
Good.
much.
All right, guys.
Thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you too.
All right. Got my computer here. All right, so moving on to town warrant for 50,350. What's that?
Town manager.
Oh, I skipped over town manager. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's
Sarah, did
okay.
you have anything?
Just very quickly wanted to let you all know that we're going to be removing the need for making appointments to come into town hall. That's going to start after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
We're gonna open back up to the public. It seems all other towns are open, and we were worried about schools closing due to COVID-related illnesses, so that pushed us back a little bit. But at this point, we've decided internally that we're gonna open back up. So no.
So the door will be
But
unlocked.
the door will still be locked. We're gonna limit the lobby to 2 people at a time. So when you enter, you'll just buzz in and staff will let you know if they'll let you in, or they'll say, we have a couple of people in the lobby right now, if you wouldn't mind waiting in your car for a moment while we, just so that it's not
Until the next.
too
until someone
crowded in
comes
there,
out.
right? We only have 2 available windows, and
Mhm.
2 staff members at any time on the front.
Right.
Wanted to let you
Making
know that.
progress.
So that's good.
Yep.
Is that something you can notify on the website?
Yes, absolutely. That's our plan, is to post it on the website, and we'll put it on the doors as notices as well.
Mask required.
Masks still required. Yep, of course. And then the only other thing that I had was just a reminder that we're closed this Thursday for Veterans Day, and then are closed for Thanksgiving, Thursday, November 26th, and the Friday after on the 27th. And then when we come back that Monday is when we no longer will need appointments. Registering your car.
So people will not make appointments at all now. So
Yep.
that's, the appointments are done. We'll be done
Appointment-
after that.
Yes,
In other words, you won't take.
You won't take appointments, I guess is my question.
we won't take appointments. Yeah.
Okay.
If people want to make an appointment and see if there's a preferable time because they have something lengthy, like I know marriage certificates often take up to an hour. I mean, it's that would be a fine courtesy call, but you don't need to make an appointment. No.
Okay. That's good. Cool. Thank you. That's good news.
Yeah.
And- All right, so moving on to our town warrant for $50,352.33. Do I have a motion? Moved by Tor. Do I have a second? Seconded by Rob. Any discussion on this? Okay. All those in favor? All right. Passes 5-0. And so now I just need to go, motion to go into executive session under 1 MRSA section 4056A personnel.
Would you amend that to E instead of A?
It's A as well as
It's
E,
A.
David.
Yeah.
Well, I disagree. It's A.
Yeah.
So I would have to
respectfully
vote against
disagree.
it if it's A, but if it's E,
A and
I'm
E,
fine.
A and E.
I don't see it as A. I can't say it's A.
Well,
I've conferred
I'll
with our
just-
town attorney and
okay. So all in favor of going in, you don't have to go, you don't have to
I
be in favor.
understand.
All in favor of going into, or do I have a motion? Moved by Karen, seconded by Rob. All those in favor? All right, all those opposed? Okay, passes 4-1.
All right. Thank you all.